Arsenal players low in confidence. Wenger, as low as it gets for Arsenal right now, was how one Gunners favourite described another humbling defeat by Manchester City, as the feeling grew around the Emirates Stadium that one of football's longest managerial reigns is drawing to a close. There were tens of thousands of empty seats, and a toxic atmosphere from those who braved the weather, as the Gunners were beaten 3-0 by the runaway Premier League leaders for the second time in 5 days. BBC Sport pundit Ian Wright called Sunday's Wembley defeat in the Carabao Cup final an insipid performance, and his former teammate Martin Keown went even further on Thursday. The Gunners won 3 Premier League titles in Arsene Wenger's first 8 seasons in charge, but none in the following 13. Sitting 6th, they are closer to bottom-placed West Brom than leaders City in points this season. If you are viewing this page on the BBC News app, please click here to vote. A sad evening. Outplayed and outfought, Keown, who played in those 3 title-winning seasons under Wenger, was scathing in his BBC Radio 5 Live analysis. It's turning into a sad evening for Wenger. They've been outplayed and outfought, he said. The ingredients were put together by Wenger in 2004. Everyone was at boiling point and they had that desire to win games. You could see it with a player in midfield that controls the ball and demands the ball from the defenders. There was Marc Overmars, Emmanuel Petit and Patrick Vieira. Some of the Arsenal fans who did turn up held up banners calling for Wenger to go. Wenger inherited a defense, but he worked with that platform. They didn't have any of that defense in 2004 but still had the same desire. People have been in the comfort zone too long in this team. I was calling for more desire and intensity from Arsenal, but you can't really play against that. The problems have been there all season for Arsenal, and you can't suddenly turn it on. They've looked good going forward, but they always look like they could concede. They used to say it was like watching Brazil at Arsenal. I'm not sure what it's like watching now. It's been a very tepid and sad evening. Not seen it this bad since Neil left in the 1980s. Now the press conference almost becomes more important than the actual game for Arsene, continued Keown. He felt there was an overreaction after the final. He hoped there'd be a response, but they've been totally outplayed. I don't think I've seen it this bad for Arsenal since maybe former manager Terry Neal left in the 1980s. I don't think he'll walk, but this will test his resolve. Big questions are being asked now, if these players are giving their all for Arsene Wenger. Listen to Keown's thoughts on BBC Radio 5. Liveth game was over inside 33 minutes as Bernardo Silva, David Silva and Leroy Sane put City out of touch. The Gunners' £56 million record signing, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, had a penalty saved in the second half. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang has scored 1 goal in his opening 4 games for Arsenal. I feel we put a lot of effort in tonight, Wenger told BBC Sport after the game. We played with low confidence. You could see that at the start of the game and we paid for it. We needed the penalty to go in, but that was another negative. We lost to a team that is the best in the country at the moment, on the low. Crow, he said, you cannot be euphoric after what happened on Sunday, and again tonight. The weather explains it as well. The end is surely coming for Wenger. The official attendance was 58,420, but the actual amount of fans at the game appeared to be much lower. BBC Sport chief football writer Phil McNulty. Arsenal's latest humiliation at the hands of Manchester City, played out before thousands of empty seats at Emirates Stadium, carried an ominous air of finality for manager Arsene Wenger. The end may not be imminent, but it is surely coming for the man who brought such glory to the Gunners after he arrived at Arsenal in October 1996. Wenger himself, so enduringly optimistic against increasing odds even when he signed a new 2-year contract at Arsenal last summer, must know himself the credits are rolling on a story that cannot possibly last beyond the end of this season. The final chapter is being written. City were magnificent on Thursday night, but the 2 3-0 victories they have recorded over Arsenal in the last 5 days, this following on from the EFL Cup final win at Wembley on Sunday, barely scratch the surface of the gulf between the two teams, the two clubs and the two managers, Wenger and Pep Guardiola. And this will be the crux of the matter for Arsenal's hierarchy, especially owner Stan Kroenke, who have been so unfailingly loyal to Wenger even as they have drifted further from the pack and without a Premier League title since 2003-04. The empty seats, the apathy and the anger, added to A seventh loss since the turn of the year only underlines that Arsenal as a club have not only gone stale under Wenger. The danger now is that unless they act soon, a gap will develop that could take many years and many millions of pounds to claw back. This means an exit strategy for Wenger, who has managed to offset failings elsewhere with 3 FA Cup wins in the last 4 seasons, must now be on the agenda. Arsenal has appeared to be a club and an ownership enthralled to Wenger. In recent years, his authority unchallenged even when questions needed to be asked. Now the most difficult of all must be posed, and the answer can only be that one of the great managerial dynasties is drawing to a close. A man of such stature, a true Arsenal great who revolutionized the domestic game when he arrived in North London, deserves a dignified departure, but football does not offer up those sort of happy endings too often. Wenger has looked a beaten man in these last few days, and it may be the manner of these losses, plus the reaction of both the fans who turned up and those who stayed away, has finally sealed his fate. It will be a sad day when Arsene Wenger leaves Arsenal, but it is one that cannot be avoided for much longer. The stats which sum up Arsenal's travails: the Gunners have lost more matches in all competitions in 2018 than any other Premier League team. 7. Arsenal suffered their joint heaviest home Premier League defeat, having also lost by 3-goal margins to Coventry 1993, Middlesbrough 2001, and Chelsea twice in 2009. This was Manchester City's biggest away win at Arsenal in any competition since a 4-0 triumph in November 1912. Arsenal are now on their longest Premier League run without a clean sheet, 10 matches, since February 2002, 11 matches. This was the first time Arsenal conceded 3 goals in the first half of a home Premier League game, and the first time they'd done so in a home league game since March 1989 against Nottingham Forest. Get involved. We also asked for your thoughts on. Here's a selection of what you had to say. John, watching here in the US, and I am done. Why should we support Arsenal if they don't care? Out with Wenger. Roble, I still support Wenger to get back Arsenal to the level he brings. But he must act quick and get rid of the midfield passengers. Ethan, all this what nonsense about what Wenger has achieved? He's won 3 titles in 21 years. Name another top club that would allow this. He's underachieved, and his refusal to invest adequately into his squad over the year has caught up with him. Ricky, Bristol, even as a Spurs fan, it's hard to watch Arsenal like this. Former Gunners striker Thierry Henry has said he would like to manage the club in Kenilworth. Bring in Thierry Henry until the end of the season and maybe beyond if successful. Less of a risk now. This season is a complete write-off, and might even install some passion back into the team. Mark, I've defended Wenger for years now, as I feel that he doesn't get enough respect for what he achieved at Arsenal, but even I'm saying it's time for a shake-up at the Emirates. Time for a change. Paul, I didn't think Arsenal were too bad, however. City have gone up another level since Sunday. Sane has been amazing. Gals, Arsenal are the laughingstock of the football world. At barely any club there's this discrepancy between aspiration and reality. Wenger needs to be fired ASAP. Tuchel, for example, would be available right now. Dave, Arsenal should look decent going forward given the money they've spent in that area. But even a fat armchair fan like me can see that the defense has long needed surgery. Aubameyang must wonder what he's let himself in for. Sean, Czech, Bellerin, Mustafi, Xhaka are consistently poor. There's one thing buying Xhaka, it's another starting him every single game. Clearly our defensive training is not intense enough. Toxic from board to management. Look at company. Leaders bring victory. Michael, it's a bit harsh to judge Arsenal and their coach when they're undone by this extraordinarily talented Man City team.